All right, what is Islam and how did it begin in Arabia around 600 A.D.? Well, let's start with the Quran. 3 ways you can spell it are all up there. I will accept any one of those ways of spelling it. The reason why there's 3 ways to spell it is like when we went over Chinese dynasties. They're originally written in Arabic, and we don't have that beginning sound in Quran. It doesn't exist in English language. So we either put a Q or a K, but neither are really correct. So it's the Quran. What is the Quran? The Quran is the major source of teaching for Muslims. It is the major source of teaching for Muslims. It was written down as Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, received his revelations. It was written down as the Prophet Muhammad received his revelations over a long period of time. So it was written down as the Prophet Muhammad received his revelations over a long period of time. So, very basically, the Quran, as Muslims believe, comes from God, and the message was given to the angel Gabriel, who then gave the message to Muhammad, who recited it, and his followers wrote it down. I'll repeat that. So the message started with God. Muslims believe Quran is directly from God, but the message came from God to the angel Gabriel, who gave the message to Muhammad, who recited it, and it was then written down by his followers, because Muslims believe that Muhammad could not read or write when he was receiving these revelations. Now, why the angel Gabriel? Why not directly from God? The same reason that Moses didn't speak directly to God. When Moses spoke to God, it was given by a burning bush. And many religions say this, that humans can't take a direct message from God, so it's got to be given to us through another means, an angel, a symbol. Does that make sense? So it was the angel Gabriel who, in the Christian tradition, angel Gabriel gave a very important message to Mary. Okay? So, Muhammad's followers were called the Ummah. Muhammad's followers were called the Ummah at this time. That was his community of followers who were believing him. And it's important to remember that where Muhammad was living, the majority of people were polytheistic, believed in more than one God, although there were some Jewish people and Christians as well. But again, Muslims believe that Muhammad could not read and write, so it wasn't possible for him to read those books and then give his message. That's why they say it's proof that the message was given directly from God. That is in the Muslim belief. All right? So, for Muslims, the Quran is very, very, very sacred and holy because they believe it's the direct word from God given to Muhammad, who was the messenger. Prophet Muhammad is the messenger. Muslims see the Prophet Muhammad as the last and greatest prophet. They also believe in other prophets. They believe that Jesus was a prophet, for example. So they believe Jesus was more like an Elijah or a Moses. Okay? The Quran has 114 chapters. 114 chapters. It gives rules on how to live your life, how to run a government, for example, but mostly how you should live your life as God wants you to live. How you should live your life as God wants you to live. It's written in Arabic. It's written in Arabic. And many Muslim scholars or Muslim researchers would say that if you really want to read the Quran, you should read it in its original language, Arabic, because you won't lose anything in translation.
Is there one in English?
Oh yeah, I have a copy. I have a copy of it in English. So you get a copy in English, you can buy it in most bookstores. If you look it up, you can find it. It's easy to find. So you can read in English, and most of my friends who are Muslims, most people I know would say that's a good start. Read it in English, understand it, but at some point you should try to learn Arabic if you really want to understand it. That's because sometimes when you translate, it doesn't always translate correctly. The example I like to use is if I say in English, it's raining cats and dogs, and if you translate that in most languages like Spanish, and you just say it to someone who only speaks Spanish, would it make any sense? They would think, what's wrong with you? That doesn't make any sense at all. You'd probably just translate it as, it's raining hard. But that's not a direct 100% translation. That make sense? So, all right, so that is how the Quran was written. Muhammad's followers wrote it down. Let's continue with our next part, which is the 5 pillars of Islam. A pillar is a big pole, a support that holds up a building. So these are seen as the 5 supports or the 5 pillars that hold up the religion, that are necessary for the religion. Codification. We're basically looking at codification of Islam. So, we have 10 commandments. We have the 5 basic relationships, the 4 noble truths that we learned about earlier in the year. Now our 5 pillars of Islam. Number 1 would be, for Muslims, would be faith. Muslims believe that there's only one God, Allah. Allah just means God in Arabic. That there's one God, and that the Prophet Muhammad is God's messenger. So again, Muslims believe that there is one God. They would say the name for God is Allah. And that the Prophet Muhammad gave this message. A difference between Muslims and Christians is that most Muslims actually have a deep respect for Christians and Jewish people. They say they're people of the book. They got God's message, but because so many different people wrote it down, it got kind of mixed up. And that's why God spoke to Muhammad directly through the angel Gabriel. Does that make sense? It's why we actually share a lot of traditions with Muslims, whether you know that or not. Okay? So, faith. That's actually a lot like the first commandment. Let's get to prayer. Our second one, prayer. Muslims believe in prayer. They would call it salat. I believe I'm saying that correctly. Salat, which means basically pray 5 times a day. Basically, it means pray 5 times a day. Most Muslims I know are pretty tech savvy, and if they want to find out what time to pray, they just look it up online. What direction? You're supposed to face towards Mecca. You can also Google that and find it pretty easily. So, you're supposed to pray 5 times a day, and you're supposed to pray towards Mecca, which means that at 5 times a day, the devout Muslims are all praying, same time, towards the same place. That does kind of bring unity to people, that they're all doing the same thing at the same time. So it's an act of unity for Muslims. So if you ever see, like around prayer times, if there's someone who's a Muslim washing up, getting ready to pray, and they go pray together, some schools have a group of students who do that, for example. Okay? My friends who are Muslims, I have some who try to pray 5 times a day, every single day. And I know some Muslims who maybe have prayed 5 times in their life. Like Christians. I know some Christians who go to church every single Sunday. I know some Catholic Christians who need to go to the early Sunday Mass and go to every single church service they're supposed to go to. You guys know anyone like that? Like every single one, they're there. And they better be there. And if you don't go there, they'll let you hear it. All right? Maybe get the chocolate out too. All right. So, and there are some Christians who show up on Easter and Christmas. Correct? So, would it make sense that Muslims would have the same variant of people? Some are very serious, very devout, and some pray every once in a while. All right? Like most faiths. So, You're supposed to pray 5 times a day. If you can't pray at that exact time because you're in class or something, most Muslims I know would just pray as soon as they can. All right? So let's get to the next one, which is zakat, or giving. The next one is zakat, or giving. And this is, you need to give to the poor. One of the pillars of Islam is you are required to give part of your earnings to the poor. Part of your money needs to go to the poor. This is, of course, within reason. What that means is you don't have to give away your last scrap of food if it's all you have. Does that make sense? You can give away if you have extra. But if you're a Muslim and you have extra, you are supposed to give away part of your donations. I don't think there's a number on it, but you give away part. And if you have more, you're supposed to give more. Okay? If you're barely getting by, you don't have to give as much. I'll continue. The fast. This one you probably have heard about. The fast is called Ramadan, during the month of Ramadan. The fast, most of you probably think of the fast during Ramadan. Muslims have other times to fast, but this is the big one you've probably heard of. Ramadan is the month, a little bit like Lent, but I would say a little more, I'd say harder than how most Christians do Lent. During Ramadan, you are not supposed to eat or drink anything while the sun's up. For about a month. For about a month. So that means in the morning, before the sun comes up, usually a family or maybe even a community of people will have a big meal together. And you'll all eat together because you all have to fast together. And then the sun comes up and you don't eat, you don't drink water. That's the one that I think would be real tough. Until the sun goes down. And when the sun goes down, there's often family all eats together. Sometimes community members get together and have kind of like a celebration that they made it through another day of the fast. Now, why do this? And there's fasting in Christian tradition too. Part of Lent's fast is you're supposed to give up something. You're supposed to do something right. All right? Which we're in that season right now. Although most Muslims I know, when they find out what Christians do for Lent, they're kind of like, wait, that's it? This is a little harder than what most Christians do during Lent. All right? So, the reason why you do this is so you can actually feel what it's like to be without food. You can feel what it's like to be without clean water. You're also supposed to give more during this time of year. You're supposed to be more giving this time of year. You're supposed to treat people better this time of year as a reminder to bring you closer to God. Now, in Minnesota, the past couple of years, Ramadan has been tough because it's been in like June and July. Think about that, when the sun goes up and goes down in June and July. What a tough couple of Ramadans. So I have some friends, we usually have a 4th of July party at my house, barbecue and everything. And my friends, a couple of my friends have shown up who are Muslims. And I'm kind of like, are you sure this is okay? And they kind of come over and hang out. Then, like, when the sun comes out, I usually have to fire up the grill again and cook them something. So, but yeah, that is Ramadan, which is fasting. We'll get to our last one right now, which is the Hajj. The Hajj is, every Muslim is supposed to go to Mecca once in their life, if they can. They're supposed to go to the holy city of Mecca with the Kaaba that we saw once in their life if they can. When you go there, by the way, you get a lock. I think you get a locker and everything. You put your clothes, everything away. You wear simple clothes. Everyone eats community meals together, and no one has different status. You have CEOs of businesses who are billionaires next to people who barely got enough money to get there. And they all pray together in the same place. And it's a way to bring people together for equality. That's why it's done. If you can, you're supposed to do it once in your life. Now, if you live in a poorer country and you have almost no money and you can't make it there, do you have to do it? No. We're about out of time. We get 15 minutes for a lecture. So I'm going to pause it.